Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about, well, old school astrology and elaborate on it. When I'm talking about old school astrology, I'm talking about like the ways we used to calculate astrology charts during a period before the internet. Some of you may be aware of it and cognizant of it, others may not, depending on age. Or even if you are a younger person, you might have heard about this. But I mean, anyway, so even though if you weren't around to actually experience it, but back in what I call the day, what it's like really like the prehensile days compared to now, we're looking at, there was a time when when I'd be calculating charts, when I'd be drawing them up, actually literally drawing them up, and it would be through the use. I'd have like a compass, a protractor, and maybe even a ruler sometimes to draw the lines for the house, for the for the house cusp, for the axis, I guess you could say, of the cusp of the houses, and also and to use them for the house cusps themselves, actually. But the thing about it was there was a time, I mean, using that and drawing the circle, the chart wheel that way. And I mean, it was obviously much more, tedious, time consuming, and painstaking, but it really, you felt like you really earned whatever you did in terms of the actual work and because of the work and labor that went involved. And the thing about this is also too, as far as the calculations, when I also we used an ephemeris back then. I mean, table of houses. There's what I used at the time was a Koch table of houses. Actually, now I'm more. I mean, I'm into not more. I do my charts based on the Placidus house system, but back then I was using the Koch table of houses again in the ephemeris, and I'd have like a time zone change book. And there was really, I mean, this was something, I mean, looking back at this, it just shows you like how far we've really come since that period. And it just seems like, it almost seems like it was yesterday practically, that me and many other people were drawing charts up that way. Now, I understand at that time, I mean, they had like astrology software you can get, and you could and I'm sure you could have calculated the charts using that astrological software, for whether it would be a Commodore 64 computer or whatever it had been at that particular, in that time period back like in the 1980s. I mean, I became interested in astrology around 1982, and I started to like try to draw, well, not to try to actually draw the charts up, probably was around, I'd say 1985. I may have begun to start actually erecting the astrology charts around 1985, 1986. And this is, I mean, it's kind of like, remember that Virginia Slim slogan? Some of you may have remembered, "You've come a long way, baby." Well, astrology obviously has come a long way since that period. But the thing is, I mean, I would be looking back on that, and also the fact that, I mean, we didn't have the internet back then, of course. I don't think the internet came around to around 94, 95, 1994, 1995, somewhere around there. So basically, it was just the simple fact that when we would have to calculate a chart. If you didn't have like the computer software, you would be doing it pretty much by hand. And if you wanted to look up anything astrologically, you pretty much would have to go to the library or buy some books. And it really, again, I mean, it was something which had certain work involved. I mean, there's obviously reward that you get from doing the research and obtaining it. I mean, you gain a wealth of knowledge from reading a lot of books. But now having the internet, of course, you could really facilitate matters in terms of the astrological chart calculation. And if you have to do any research regarding things that are connected with astrology and astrology charts, that, I mean, you have the internet now to actually do that, of course, to help facilitate things. But back in the day, it was just again, it was a rather, tedious, time-consuming process. And the thing is, the astrology has gone, a long way, since that period, because now you're talking about a time back in the 80s, prior to the internet, and even up to like 1994, 95, whatever it was before we had the internet. All this work, a lot of it had to be done by hand. But you look at right now in 2020, it's not just the fact we have the internet at our disposal. It's the fact that astrology has just ascended and escalated to such great new heights, being accepted more through as far as mainstream goes, and really, as far as television goes. I mean, we did have, many of you may know David Lawrence Palmer, aka the Leo King, has appeared on Steve Harvey's show, and it's really and the thing is, the astrology has really become something where more and more people are cognizant of it, and more people find it at least somewhat plausible, as opposed to the past, when it was as opposed in the past where maybe more people might have just thought it was, hocus pocus, it was preposterous, it was something that didn't have much credence to it. But now more and more people have become interested in it. But again, going back to that period, again, it just seems like it's so hard to believe that there was a point in time where these charts were actually done. I mean, at least perceived as much more primitively, in contrast to now. And the thing is, and now you have, I mean, it's just a thing where the astrology has really become something now where, people, it's become something more connected, with the computers and with the internet. And it really, I'm sure there's not many people now that are doing the astrology charts by hand like they did in the past. You still might have a few people that might do it here and there. I don't think it's become completely obsolete. But the thing about it is, though, it just was something that was it was an interesting period as far as the beginning. That was really my beginning point in doing as far as learning to calculate astrology charts and trying to dissect them and decipher them at that time. And it was something now where it's really, and now it's at a point where, I mean, we can go to astro.com and we could just type in information in the parameter fields and have that information processed very quickly. But people have to realize how lucky they are right now, that the younger people out there, that they don't have to worry about having to try to erect or calculate a chart through the prehensile methods of the past. I mean, we calculate like a sidereal, a calculated sidereal time, and you'd look it up in a table of houses, and then you'd find the house positions by doing so. I mean, so the house placements, I should say, the signs on the cusp of the houses by doing that. And anyway, it was just something that was, it was a lot different, to say the least, than it was right now in terms of astrological chart calculation, and also getting the information that would apply to astrological charts. Of course, that was much more painstaking and time consuming back then. Again, whether have to order books connected with that part of astrology interpretation you were looking for, or you'd have to go to the library. Now, many of us, for astrologers, like me and other people, we don't have to really research much, because we know most of what we're supposed to know in terms of, as far as the chart, analysis goes and everything. But I'm talking about people that actually are in that, beginning stage. They're at that novice level. Back then, when I was, you could say, at the novice level of astrology, that was something. I mean, I had to, whenever I wanted to find out things regarding understanding, comprehending my own chart better, I generally either had to order books or had to go to the library. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.